So we're going to talk about how to check the type of an object. How to check the type of an object, which means we want to know before we do anything with a certain object that I've given us, we need to find out the type. So these objects can be the system objects that are initially defined like integers, floats, strings, or they can be the objects you have defined, you have predefined using your the class keyword. Now we can do it in two ways. We can use the type, and then we can use the instance function. Now let's define a function here called check type. It takes in an argument of number. Then using the type function to check the type of object, we can say type number. Now here it's going to return for us what type the number is. Is it an integer? Is it a float? And we shall say okay, fine. If it's an integer, if it's equal to int, do something with the integer. Now for isInstance. Now the good thing about isInstance is this, is that I can have a number and I want to check whether it's an integer or a float. Both. If it's either an integer or a float, I want to do something with it. If it's only an integer, I want to do something with it. If it's a float, I want to do something with it. So what isInstance does, it takes in the argument number, then it's going to take an argument which is a tuple. That's if you want to put in multiple objects to check. So it will take in a tuple and it will check int. That a tuple, so what we want to check whether this number, what this number is, whether is it an integer or a float. Then if it's any of the two, if it's an integer, do something with the integer. It's supposed to be all here. Or if it's a float, do something with the float. So then again we are going to check. Now we are going to check. We're going to call the function check type. Then we are going to pass in the number 5. So what it's going to do is going to come here and see 5. 5 is an integer. So it's going to print in, do something with the integer. Again 5 is an integer, but it's not a float. So it's going to print do something with the integer or float. So if we run this code, we can see here that it has printed out for us do something with the integer, and it has printed out for us do something with the int or float. Now, what if we passed in a float? So if we pass in a float of 4.2, here type, it's going to, this type function is going to return back float, but float is not equal to integer, so it's going to ignore this. Then isInstance. Since isInstance checks whether it's an integer or a float, since this time it's a float, so it's going to print do something with the integer or float. So if we run the code, you can see it's printed out for us do something with the integer or float. Now that's how you check the type of object. So there are two ways to do it. You can use the type function, or you can use the isInstance function. The difference is the type function you can only do it in for one object at a time, while the isInstance function you can do it for 3 objects, 4 objects, 5 objects at a time. So probably maybe your code needs only 2 types of objects, maybe an integer and a float, and you only need those 2. If it's anything outside, maybe a string or anything outside that criteria, you have to ignore it. So that's how to do the check, to check the type of an object before you do anything in your code.